Hi, I'm Mike Lappel for BizNews.com. It's really good to speak to Dr. Ralph Mathekga again. He's a political analyst. It's been a little while since we've chatted, Ralph, but thanks for being back.
It's a great pleasure, Michael, to be chatting to you. It's been a while indeed, but a lot has happened as usual.
A lot has happened, and it always happens on the weekends, especially when it comes to the ANC, the so-called, and we're going to get to these names, the Taliban slate in KZN defeated the Ankole slate. Let's just start there. What do you make of the names of these slates?
I think the names are quite odd that in a democratic dispensation, a constitutional democracy where everyone is free to speak and everything, people will call themselves by the name of a known terrorist movement, actually, Taliban. It shows they are tone deaf to the reality in South Africa if they think they can just admire such kind. I mean, it actually, you ask yourself, are they positioning themselves to resist against what, or are they going to implement what? It becomes very difficult to understand such kind of odd naming in a democracy. It borders on being offensive, actually.
And the Ankolas, voting fodder, cattle?
Just another lack of taste, Michael. I mean, Angola is a breed of a cow, and cows are known not to think. When people are saying you're voting cows, it just simply means you're just being part of other people's project. So I don't know if that just captures that, but it is also oddly named why people are calling themselves that. I'll tell you, Michael, one thing I find quite worrying is that why can't people define themselves in terms of acceptable worldviews? When I say acceptable, I mean if people want to be progressive, or why can't they just use plain examples of defining themselves? It shows lack of imagination. It looks like any name that is quite catchy, snazzy, get attached to these factions. I've heard of the Taliban before, I think, or maybe things are just so odd you feel you have had it in the ANC.
Now, what message has been sent by the biggest voting bloc come December, the KZN ANC bloc? What message has been sent here to Cyril Ramaphosa and his reform agenda? Is it going nowhere slowly?
They're being very aggressive. The message is very clear that actually it's no longer about President Ramaphosa. I think the party is forming beyond Ramaphosa. And the big message from this KZN provincial conference that has just taken place is that there is just no compromise. The party, the ANC, will most likely look very differently after President Ramaphosa. It looks quite dicey for him going into an elective conference on the back foot like this. But it's not unexpected. It's not surprising. It will always shock when it comes to expression. But no doubt it has been coming that the KZN is a big bloc that has always going to be a problem for President Ramaphosa because of the legacy of President Jacob Zuma.
And 9 out of the 11 regions in KZN have endorsed none other than Dr Zweli Mkhize. Is that a worrying factor for Mr. Ramaphosa?
Even beyond Mr. Ramaphosa, everybody else should worry. I am worried myself because I'm just imagining endorsing someone who's still facing the problem in relation to the digital vibes scandal, for that matter. I mean, shouldn't Dr. Zweli Mkhize under normal circumstances be a hot potato now, not to touch in politics, given that the digital vibe scandal, you read about it every day about further development, but he seems to be politically ascending as if there is nothing that is happening, actually. So it's quite worrying. I ask myself, which world do these people live in?
Yeah, one would think Dr. Mkhize is radioactive, I think is a good term, but apparently not. So
you nailed it.
Yeah. Speaking of the digital vibes case, it's yet to be referred to the MPA for decision on whether or not to prosecute him. So he's still eligible to stand in the leadership race come December. And the same goes for, obviously, President Ramaphosa. But with the Hawks looking into the Phala Phala investigation, if the step-aside rule is indeed being used to get rid of political detractors, as so many, including the KZN ANC, believe, it could actually backfire on Ramaphosa if he is charged. Is that correct?
Indeed. I mean, the whole step-aside rule, when they thought about at the beginning, the thinking was that they are the usual suspect and the usually good guys. But it looks as if within the ANC, it's almost like all the same in relation to bad behavior. The only difference may be whether you are sitting with a polite or a rude member. But the question is to whether you are sitting with someone who is upstanding. That just might not be relevant anymore within the ANC. You know what you're getting. So I do think that it is becoming very clear that if they were to apply the step-aside rule fairly and openly without favor, everyone within the party, or at least half of the party, will be gone. So clearly it is becoming practical where things are.
Now, looking at the actual conference, things that external parties will look at and go, this Wenzeni uZuma song, what did Zuma do? You may look at it and go, it's just a song. Does it represent a lot more than that?
I think it has become also a symbol of ignorance on the other hand, because when you're asking Wenzeni Zuma, I ask you, where have you been yourself? Because I think people should retort that way, because the evidence is out there about the things, but that just shows how the fight within the NC are beginning to infiltrate state institutions, because with a political victory such as that, it also means there will be a pushback against any attempt to prosecute Zuma on other issues that are outstanding, which a lot of people know he need to answer on. So it actually throws a mixed message. And at some point, people have to decide whether they want to be in government or they just want to be a small pressure group. It should be an easy decision to make, because being in government should involve taking responsibility and supporting the institutions of governance, such as the prosecution, the judges, and so forth. You should not be seen infiltrating. But the questions that are being asked about Zuma, it shows that the people are going to be able to put the institutions such as the prosecution under pressure, political pressure not to pursue those cases. And it is unfortunate.
The faction that emerged victorious, they want the step-aside rules scrapped. They're also a grouping that supports the creation of a state bank. They support expropriation without compensation, and they support changing the mandate of the Reserve Bank. Should this come as a surprise? Because these are ANC policies that they just want implemented.
Those are ANC policies that they want implemented, but at some point they're going to have to explain to people why. You can't just show fascination with some ideas without explaining the relevance. I mean, you need to show that you live in a real society where you're being expected to step up to the problem. And you ask yourself, some of the problems that you are encountering in society now, how are some of those interventions going to actually help? The problem is that there is something that is worrying for me, Michael. There seems to be an indulgence by the ANC. You look at the policy document, you ask yourself, are these meant to deal with the problem, or is it just an exercise in people just demonstrating they've thought about it? I don't know. Looks like a nice essay. But on a serious note, people are going to ask, what are you going to do practically about the current crisis, crime, unemployment, inflation, all of these kind of things? None of them is being addressed in that policy document, not in precise terms at least.
Now, initial media reports was that, Ramaphosa wouldn't attend. He had other commitments. Then he would attend. Then people weren't sure. Then he does attend, and there's initially some booing and singing. But the alternative for him would be to be left looking scared to face his own party members. Do you think he was under pressure to attend?
I think he has allowed too much speculation about his attendance without clarifying anything before. That on its own is a problem. I mean, we were already having a discussion. I was having a discussion with a few people in the media asking me, is the president attending or not? And it has always been clear that it was going to be very odd for him to explain his non-attendance there. He will have acknowledged, therefore, that he's not charge of the party in KZN, and he's not even going to make efforts. So it's good that he ended up going there, irrespective of the booing and everything, because the booing is also a reflection of those who booed him, for that matter. Remember, the booing is at the receiving end of the booing, and at the end of the day, the net effect is the ANC, where people are booing each other as a way of communication. The voters should see that.
Any serious contenders to President Ramaphosa besides Dr Zweli Mkhize who've put their hands up?
I think other people might come in later on. I can't think of individuals. The thing is that the individuals who are going in there are among the weakest in the ANC recently to run for election, including even the president himself. So why can't everybody else give it a shot who they can? So it might end up opening up even more. Ramaphosa's presidency has been difficult and precarious, where everybody else might think they have a shot at it.
Mavuso Msimang, the ANC veteran, he believes that the whole Phala Phala scandal is an albatross around the president's neck and that he must step aside. What do you think of that?
I think one way or another, his exit is near. It's just a matter of whether it will be in the middle of the second term or not. I mean, in reality, we must already be talking about the post-Ramaphosa ANC. That's just what it is. I think that's what it is. We have to face that thing. Looking at what happened in KZN, whether the question, he must step aside, it doesn't matter. The question is, we must already start projecting how the ANC is going to be after him, because that process of building the ANC beyond Ramaphosa is exactly what we are seeing going on in KZN.
Lastly, when we spoke last time, it was about Operation Dudula. This is a movement that is, some will say, anti-migrant, is promoting xenophobia, pretty much a law unto itself in informal settlements and in CBDs where there are a lot of foreign nationals. Nhlanhla Lux, or Nhlanhla Mohlauli, his real name. There's been some divisions between him and Operation Dudula, but I'm looking at a tweet now. It's from an hour ago. And it says 11 a.m. media briefing between Operation Dudula and Soweto Parliament. Put South Africa first will also be present. Calling a spade, hashtag 2024 elections. This guy's launching a political party. Ralph, what do you think of that?
Well, it was always going there because the type of movement in the Dudula, they are never sustainable. Probably is forming a party because there are already internal cracks and division within Dudula. So usually such kind of movement, they come up with the promise of being democratic, not interested in parties, usually saying those who are involved in politics are all not getting it. Or subsequently for people to then say that, oh, it's inevitable that we actually go into politics. That has always been the ultimate goal. And this is just another party that is there because the space exists. How far will they do? It all depends on how they use the space. The thing with South Africa's politics, the bar for entry is amazingly low.
Yeah, guys running around in camouflage and bulletproof vests and berets. We've normalized this.
We have normalized it, and no one is asking whether are we living, what are their projections. I mean, I get confused about a lot of things. I know when I'm not in a military regime, I'm expecting certain behavior from civilians. But when I start seeing civilians themselves being fascinated with the strength of military presence, what I call the big man politics, I get worried about what is the future of this country. Why can't we just have a normal conversation like everybody else?
Dr. Ralph Mathekga, great pleasure chatting to you. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.